morning, everybody. It is Friday. It is June 26th. I'm Julie Roginsky here with my friend Jeff Jarvis. Jeff, you and I are both not at our usual places. You look like you're in a TV studio. I'm
at my former journalism school at CUNY.
Okay, wonderful.
And you're at a real TV studio, I think.
I'm not in the TV studio right now, but I am at MS Now. I'm actually co-anchoring for 2 hours today from noon to 2 Eastern with my good friend Alicia Menendez, who I adore. She
is so great. I'm so glad she's on in the daytime.
I am too. Alicia and I have known each other since she's a little younger than me, since she was a little girl. I used to be close to her dad, and she's a wonderful, wonderful person, always has been. And when you talk about somebody who I'm so glad for, I am very, very glad for her, which is why I got myself out of bed, took a shower. It was not easy.
Say hello for me. She's the greatest, and I'm delighted that we have. How do I put this? MS Now during the day used to have the old style of TV of trying very hard to say nothing. Mm-hmm. And Alicia is wonderful at being honest and blunt and direct with her audience. And I so appreciate it.
And she's very smart. Very, very smart. So I could spend the next hour talking about Alicia, but instead of that, why don't you
if only all of journalism were Alicia.
Why don't you just tune in at noon and you can see the two of us go at it, not with each other, but just talk about stuff for 2 hours. I actually don't know what I'm talking about. They sent me a rundown, but I was running around so much. I didn't really have a chance to look at it. And now we're doing the show. So it'll be a surprise to me, like it'll be a surprise to everybody watching. We'll see. I heard John Bolton just pled guilty to some charge that Trump decided to indict him on. So there you go. Okay.
I mean, this is the world where one doesn't want to find oneself being sympathetic to John Bolton, but
I used to work with John Bolton at Fox.
Really?
Yes, and I have to say that John Bolton, and this is going to shock the hell out of you and probably everybody else, is one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life.
Really?
Yep. Absolutely hilarious sense of humor, super dry, super quick. He is just funny as hell, and it doesn't excuse the fact that he has never met a country he doesn't want to bomb into oblivion. But other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, he's a pretty funny guy. All right. Let's talk about, because you and I kind of said, you sent me what you want to talk about today. And I said, I think you and I might have a little disagreement on this. So why don't we go to the part where we might disagree, but I'm not sure if we're going to disagree.
I think we'll disagree on nuanced points.
Yeah. You said basically that, I'm trying to pull this up. Hold on a second. We were talking about the fact that the New York Times, from your perspective, as you said, and the Wall Street Journal, no surprise, were quote unquote clutching their pearls, as you said, about socialism after Tuesday in New York. The Times says that liberals are tolerating far left views. I want you to say what you meant by that, because I have my own viewpoint about where I think the Times is on this and also where I am on this. So go ahead.
So a few things. One is I noticed that both the Times and the Journal leave off the democratic part of democratic socialism. I think that they want to plain out label this as socialism. And if you look at the New York Post, it had a plain out, honest to God, red baiting headline about Reds in New York.
Yeah.
So I think that's one historical context we have to give the freight of the word socialism. Point one. Point two, I think that a lot of what concerns people is not necessarily the socialistic political views, but is the controversy around Israel and Gaza.
Right.
And I think that there are lessons there for the Democrats right now. And I'm eager to hear your view on this after Tuesday. My view is simply that we have to find ourselves in a position where just as anyone in the world right now can like America and criticize what America is doing, so must we all be able to too light a word, to support Israel, but be heavily critical of Netanyahu and what he's doing. And I think that's an undercurrent in what's happening here. And then finally, I think that the amusing part for me is that up till Tuesday, the Times was saying they were chomping at the bit for Mamdani for the mayor to be defeated, and that this is a really tough thing. He's really out there, what he's doing. And then the next day they had to call him a kingmaker, which I found amusing.
Yeah. Well, you might be surprised, or maybe not, to find that I actually don't agree with you on some of this stuff.
Mhm.
I am deeply concerned about what happened on Tuesday. Let me start with the mayor first. I actually have a piece out today on Substack for people who have not read it about the mayor calling AIPAC "quote unquote" monsters. It's not really about calling AIPAC monsters, and I want to preface this by saying that nobody has reason to dislike AIPAC more than I do. I did. They took out.
They torpedoed the campaign you were working on with Malinowski.
Of my good friend, not just a campaign I was working on, but really just my beloved friend who I adore, who was a fantastic member of Congress, named Tom Malinowski. So I will never get over that. AIPAC knows that. I also then consulted on a different race just south of Tom Malinowski's district, where a candidate who used to hang around with a blind sheikh was in his inner circle ran, and AIPAC did nothing to defeat him, and did not help one of the candidates running, who was literally a member of AIPAC. And so at that point, I have to conclude that AIPAC's mission in life, at least until Tuesday, was to elect a specific kind of Democrat who was going to be the poster child for Jewish Democrats, so that they could say, you see, you guys are voting for the wrong party, because I think AIPAC's been hijacked by Donald Trump's donors. So
Yep.
I'm saying all of this by prefacing by saying I can't stand AIPAC. I think
Mhm.
AIPAC, and I publicly said AIPAC needs to disband. They're doing more harm than good. As somebody who's Jewish, I think they're putting me in harm's way. I just spoke to a very good friend who's Israeli, who served, in the Israeli military, and certainly, because he had to, not because he believes in that stuff, but and he agrees with me that AIPAC is completely awful and toxic and should not be around. So I say all of this to preface what I'm going to say. Zohran Mamdani calling AIPAC monsters is inexcusable. And it's inexcusable because the rate of anti-Semitism in the city has exploded since Zohran Mamdani got elected. I mean, exploded. You have to look at the statistics just over the last few months to see what's been going on. His Jewish constituents are scared to death. And I'm one of them, as somebody who's a Jewish child living in New York. And I have two observations to make about this election on Tuesday. One is that if he's concerned about the wars that we're waging, that AIPAC is waging in Gaza, like, me too, I agree. But since he's decided to become a Middle East expert and not an expert on, I don't know, free buses in New York, a promise he made that he has not come through on, free childcare, he has not come through on that. The streets are still dirty. The storefronts on Broadway are still vacant. This is what I thought people were electing him to do. But since he's decided to become a Middle East expert, I guess my question is, why single out the pro-Israel lobby and not single out the pro-Qatar lobby or the pro-Saudi lobby, which is huge? I mean, if people actually knew what Qatar was doing in our universities, what Qatar was doing, buying off journalists. There are people on this very platform on Substack who do very, very well, who are funded by Qatar. And you may not know that, but they are. And they won't deny, if you ask them, that they are. And this is the same Qatari regime that, funds Hamas, which, even if you think Hamas did the right thing on October 7th, which obviously one of Mamdani's candidates does, Darializa Chevalier, who he endorsed, does, even if you believe that, if you're a progressive, do you think Hamas has been governing like a socialist mecca down there? I mean, they throw gay people off of roofs. They make sure that women have to wear hijab if they want to go to court. They prevent women from, riding on motorcycles or cars with strange men. If you disagree with them politically, they will kill you. And I'm talking about fellow Muslims. I'm not talking about Jews. So, that's who Hamas funds. That's who Qatar funds. And yet he doesn't have a word to spare about Qatar and their lobbyists. Like, they're not monsters, really? Saudi Arabia, who we give billions of dollars to military hardware, they're not monsters? Qatar is responsible for funding the Houthis. The Yemen civil war has killed over 100,000 women and children. Why are we not talking about that? And so I guess from my perspective, I am very concerned. And I think the Times is right to be concerned, because unlike Zohran Mamdani and all of these people who you just elected, who say quite clearly that they're using the Democratic Party as a vehicle, but they have no interest in actually being a part of the Democratic Party. I have given my life to this party, and I don't like what's happening, and I don't like who's taking it over, and I don't like the fact that they are focused exclusively on the Israel issue. I mean, Dan Goldman didn't lose because he didn't want to support Medicare for all, right? Zohran Mamdani endorsed his opponent over Gaza. Adriano Espaillat, not my cup of tea, but he didn't lose because he wasn't progressive enough. He didn't lose because he didn't do what Zohran Mamdani wanted on Gaza or in Israel, and so on and so forth. I mean, this has now become the litmus test for the mayor of New York, who should be focused on helping the city. I mean, you want to focus on foreign policy, go run for Senate, but he's not. And I think he's a kingmaker in this election. I think he used all of his political capital to get these people elected. And let's see what's going to happen in the next 3.5 years. Because the city's not, this is a very tough job. It's a very tough job. It's the second toughest job after being president of the United States. And if you're going to virtue signal and you're going to focus on foreign policy and not on what people elected you to do, you're going to run into a lot of problems. And so that's my viewpoint on Mamdani. And that's why I think the Times is right for once. I know we always trash the Times, to express concern over it.
So let me make one point and then ask one question.
Yes.
My point is that I think that if the Times expressed its concerns the way you just expressed your concerns, I wouldn't have an argument with what they're saying. I think it's a perfectly legitimate view. But what they did, which I think is troubling to the extent that I think it's going to get misused by the likes of Murdoch, is that they put their concerns under the umbrella of the word socialism, as if socialism is equivalent now with supporting Hamas or supporting Palestine, let's say. And that's just not the case. It's just not true.
But it is the litmus test for the DSA. That's the problem.
Well, but again, then call it that.
Right.
Call it the Gaza question, the Palestine question, the Israel question, rather than calling it socialism, because there's so much else that fits in there. And so I might sound like I'm splitting hairs, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get them to be, I think, more accurate in their wording and how they do it. Because again, you just look at the Murdoch empire and it gets used. But here's my question to you. What's happened on Israel-Gaza is all the more difficult because of the right saying that any criticism of Israel is anti-Semitism, and they who are an anti-Semitic party 100%. Hide behind that, right? And then on the left, it's become more of a barrier where your view, your perspective, is the one that we should have in the party. And I don't think we do yet. So my question to you is, how do you get your perspective? Yes, you can criticize Israel. Yes, you should criticize Netanyahu. But but everything else you just said, you need to do this in the context of history and in knowing who the other bad guys are. How do we get that to be the view of the Democratic Party?
A couple of things. I just want to answer a point that somebody in the Substack chat said, we're not bankrolling Qatari genocide. Actually, we are. Because you should take a look at what Qatar has done for the Trump family and the Kushner family. And you will see exactly what we're bankrolling. I have a whole column on this today. I don't typically talk about this, but I truly invite you to read my column on Substack today because I lay out very much that we are. We are about to bankroll Iran to the tune of $300 billion. These are not good guys. And yet you don't see anybody shutting down college campuses over that. And you don't see anybody marching in the streets over that. And you don't see any primaries being run about that. And I got to wonder, why not? Why not? And that's when I start to wonder, why are you singling out this particular group of people that has been singled out and persecuted for the last 3,000 years? And I will venture to say that anybody who thinks we're overreacting, I would say that actually I think we're underreacting, because this history shows me and has shown all of us that typically the worst fears of this particular cohort of people usually turns out to be true. So I'll stop with that. I'll just say that. But to answer your question, I do think actually this point of view is in the Democratic Party. It's the prevalent point of view in the Democratic Party, my point of view. But what's going to happen is that unless Democrats win 50 House seats, Hakeem Jeffries is in the fight of his life to be Speaker next year. And not just Hakeem Jeffries, anybody who wants to be speaker is in the fight of his or her life to be speaker, because potentially AOC being the only exception who can maybe bring a coalition of both together, but I don't think she's going to run for speaker. Because
I think she's too smart too.
Yeah, but I think if there's a 10 to 15 seat margin, you now have a group of people who are elected, it's really the Justice Democrats, who will say to Hakeem Jeffries that unless you pull all funding for Israel, everything, including the Iron Dome, which PS saved my life when I was there, and press for, some sort of river to the sea maximalist policy, we are not going to vote for you for speaker. Now, conversely, the majority of Democrats in the House will not go along with that. And what you're going to have is a Kevin McCarthy type situation where there's going to be tremendous infighting. And I don't know if Jeffrey survives. I don't think Jeffrey should survive. I think he's been an awful leader. So this is not a brief for Hakeem Jeffries. To be clear, I'm not sitting here defending Hakeem Jeffries. I'm simply saying that whoever it's going to be on the first ballot, the second ballot, the 10th ballot, the 15th ballot. And instead of fighting Donald Trump, and instead of fighting this it's not creeping, it's here, this authoritarianism that is plaguing our country, we are going to be fighting amongst ourselves over Gaza, friends. And I think that's the part.
Well, the other way to put that, though, my friend, is we're going to be fighting that over Netanyahu. And
even over
right?
Netanyahu.
And then, and I think if we could recast it a bit, it might, because I think to say to fight, no one of any sanity wants to be in favor of Hamas. Some may be.
In favor of what?
That's going to in favor of Hamas.
Yeah,
but that's going to be a much smaller
number. Chevalier is.
Actually, I'm saying there's a small number, but that's there.
Yeah.
Versus those who support Israel but are willing to be critical of Netanyahu. That is something that people can gather around, and do gather around.
Yes, except that this is not the maximalist approach that
understood. All funding and so on.
Right. They want they don't acknowledge. Well, Chevalier doesn't acknowledge Israel's existence, right? She just doesn't acknowledge. There is, I don't know that Adam Hamway, who just got elected in this primary in the 12th congressional district of New Jersey, acknowledges Israel's existence. I don't know that Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar or I don't know the answer to that. But I think they are going to force a reckoning over this particular issue. And I will say to you that if you look at just the 13th congressional district in New York, which is where Darializa Chevalier just won, she won the white talk about white colonial occupier. She won the white gentrified parts of Manhattan that used to be Dominican, used to be Puerto Rican. Now people like me are moving in. She won that. She won whites overwhelmingly. She lost Black voters. She lost Latino voters, overwhelmingly lost Latino voters. She lost the Bronx in a big way, which has not been gentrified yet. And so you have a cohort of Black and brown people who are not going to go along with this. Richie Torres, who represents the Bronx, is not going to go. The Bronx says, he's not going along with this. And I think rather than having this fight over Benjamin Netanyahu, who's, to be clear, a horrible human being, but yet so is Mohammed bin Salman, so is the Emir of Qatar, so are the guys in Iran who we're about to give $300 billion to, so is Vladimir Putin, and yet the same cohort does not want to give money to Ukraine to fight against Putin. Right? Like, you got to wonder why.
Right.
And all of this, I think, is something that all of us need to consider, which is we should be talking about Medicare for all. Like, could we not agree that we need Medicare for all?
Exactly.
Could we not agree that,
eyes on the prize?
Yeah, that we need to fight Donald Trump's horrible, reactionary, authoritarian impulses? And yet we're not going into next year united, even in the majority. We're going into next year divided over the state of Israel, which, while important, is not something that most, I look at polls all day long. That's the advantage of working in politics. I promise you I promise you that most people who voted for Chevalier were not voting on Israel. They were voting for her because Zohran Mamdani told them to vote for her. And they love Zohran Mamdani.
So part of the question is how much pressure can be put on the Madamites?
Well, zero. They don't listen, this is the Tea Party. They don't care, right? Like, think about what the Tea Party did. They took out Eric Cantor. They ultimately took out John Boehner. They ultimately took out Paul Ryan. They ultimately took out Kevin McCarthy. The only reason, I mean, truly the only reason that Mike Johnson is still speaker is because Donald Trump has made sure that he's still speaker. If not for Trump, Johnson wouldn't be there anymore. There's no Donald Trump in our party. And so you're talking about an ungovernable coalition here. And again, at a time when we need to keep our eye on the prize, and I beg people to understand that what happened on Tuesday is not about keeping our eye on the prize about the issues that matter here. I have never walked into one focus group of Democratic primary voters, not one, where they raised their hand and said, excuse me, I think the biggest issue facing us is what's happening in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Not one. But yet that's the litmus test that everything's being decided.
So is there anyone on a tactical level? It's not Jeffries. It's not AOC either, because she's not going to do it. Is there anybody you can see? Pelosi in her time, in her heyday,
Pelosi's done.
Would have done. She's done. But in her heyday, yeah. she showed the way to strong arm people into consensus. Is there anybody?
No, because it used to be that you strong arm people by saying, I'm not going to push in the committee that you want. I'm not going to, I'm not going to let you sponsor bills that you want. Like all of that
doesn't matter to them.
They don't care. This is all performance. Because if they actually cared about improving the lives of their constituents, they would be talking about things that improve the lives of their constituents. Whether it's, look, she's about to represent, Chevalier is about to represent one of the poorest parts of the country. She's representing a wealthy part of the Bronx, which is Riverdale, but she won that. But the places that are north of Riverdale, the northern, basically she represents the South Bronx and going a little bit north. But these are people who have trouble paying their bills. These are people who live in a place with the highest rates of asthma in the country. These are people who are one emergency away from complete bankruptcy, because if they end up in the emergency room, they are screwed. And yet, that's not what she's talking about. She's talking about defunding the police. I have yet to sit through a focus group of
prisons and yes,
letting people out of prison, even if they killed somebody. She doesn't believe in incarceration. So if you murder somebody, she doesn't think you should be incarcerated. She doesn't support interracial marriage. You live in New York City, you don't support interracial marriage. I truly am stretching my brain to figure out of all my. Okay.
She's on Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's not a Trump. There's not a Trump to.
There's not a Trump to keep her in line.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not even sure there's a Mamdani to keep her in line, and I don't think Mamdani wants to.
That's the hard part. Yes.
And meanwhile, you've got Zohran Mamdani, who, with all due respect, was not elected to worry about foreign policy. He was elected to make the city of New York more livable. And I have not seen a difference. I mean, he got his rent stabilization plan through the board yesterday. He's going to freeze rents for a year. That's good for people who live in, apartments that are worried about rents being hiked. But a lot of the other commitments that he made, they just, free buses sounded good to a lot of people. Not happening. Free childcare sounded great to a lot of people. Quite frankly, if I had had free childcare, I would have had a second child, because it was just extraordinarily expensive in the city to pay for childcare up until, the age of, it's just, tens of thousands of dollars. Hasn't happened. Doesn't doing it. I mean, things that he committed to doing, he's not doing. What is he wasting his political capital on? The Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
So just for a little aside comparison here, when the Journal went after the socialists in the U.S. and the U.K., they were going after Burnham, the next PM there, and the main thing they were going after him for was the city taking over the buses, the government taking over buses. That's not socialism here. That's government here. And but in post-Thatcher UK, that's socialism, and it's interesting to see how the definitions get spread.
Yeah. And Michelle's in the chat. Hi, Michelle. Michelle
Oh,
is.
hi, Michelle.
I'm sorry. We should have said for people.
She has just enough Wi-Fi to get in the chat, no more.
For people who don't are wondering where Michelle is. Michelle's birthday's coming up, and Michelle is celebrating it on a beach somewhere. And she's having hopefully good weather up there. I don't think it's great weather up there, but I hope she's having a wonderful time. And we will miss her today. We'll miss her tomorrow, but we will see Michelle very soon next week. So I'm also going to say, Jeff, speaking of New York, in my congressional district, where Michael Lasher became the nominee to succeed Jerry Nadler, there were a bunch of candidates running. Among them, our friend Jeff Conway was running. Jack Schlossberg was running, who was Jack Kennedy Schlossberg, who was a disaster start to finish. And a man named Alex Boris was running, who came in second. Well, the New York Daily News, which used to be the counterweight to the New York Post, in that it was the liberal kind of ish newspaper back in the day, was bought out by a bunch of private equity people a little while ago.
Alden Global Capital.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was in Boston and I saw or maybe I was in Pennsylvania. Anyway, I was outside the city somewhere and I saw a Daily News. And the Daily News had on the cover, a big Alex Boris, send a fighter to Washington, taking on powerful and standing up for us. So it looked like the Daily News endorsed Boris. And I, having just walked by, obviously I don't buy the Daily News, but having just walked by, I was like, wow, the Daily News what a ringing endorsement for Alex Boris.
The whole Daily News cover. Yeah. Amazing.
On the cover. And I was like, wow, this is like phenomenal. This is a great thing for Alex Boris. Well, it turns out the Daily News Union put out a tweet that's with the cover that says, this looks like an endorsement, but it's not. The wood of the Daily News should not be for sale. The wood is the cover for a tabloid. Our staff was mortified to wake up to a front page covered by a deceptive political ad for 2 days straight. And shame on Heath, Freeman, and Alden for selling our good name for a buck. The paper has made no endorsement in this race, of which polls close tomorrow. But this ad, paid for by an Anthropic-backed PAC, sure makes it look like we have a favorite.
Yeah, it's by the way, the wood, just to do an aside here, for old Uncle Jeff aside from newspapers, when the headline was that big, when it was war, there was no machine that could make it that big. So there was no lead type, they used wood type. So if big news happened, you say, you get out the wood. And so Boris got the wood for a price, and the Daily News sold its most valuable presentation of the world, its front page, to Boris. And it was shocking. The journalists are absolutely right. What interests me about this, Julie, is that you had some positioned this as Alex Boris was the AI reformer, and that because he in the state legislature had proposed legislation to regulate AI, that AI forces went after him and he was the good guy. It is not so simple. It's an internecine war within the cults of AI. OpenAI's backed PACs spent a fortune going after Boris, but Anthropic's backed PACs went after him in return. When Anthropic says that they're the safety company, they mean safety in a redefined view, in this crazy cultish view that AI is an existential risk to society, and we're so powerful we can destroy everything, and macho pounding of chest. So it was AI versus AI. It was like the old Mad Magazine cartoon, Spy v Spy. It wasn't AI versus non-AI. The good news is, even after they spent $27 million, the two sides of this, in trying to influence this election, they couldn't push Boris over the line. And many said that OpenAI's spending on Boris only brought him up higher in perception, because they thought that, he's the anti-AI guy, and it gave him more name recognition. So there was a lot of money spent from technology in an effort to affect this election, and they failed. And I think that failure is good news. A friend of mine was doing an event trying to get tech involved with democracy. And I thought that's a good idea. And I was going to join in. And then it turned out it was really a way to push Boris. And I said, no, I'm not really comfortable with that. He has a history in Palantir and Anthropic. I don't see him as necessarily clean in this and a spokesman for the opposite of AI. So I said, never mind. So it was an interesting little sidelight to the whole race as AI tried to influence, and they will keep on doing it. They have more money than God. They think they are God. And we're going to see this again and again and again. This time, they didn't do so well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the way Boris was presented to me was if you want to stand up to AI, you got to vote for Alex Boris. I did not vote for Alex Boris, for the record. I have to say, Michelle and I talk about this a lot. I watch the debate. So we're the two nerds that watch the debate. There's like 5 people who watch the debate. Michelle Kinney watched all of it. I watched most of it. And I have prepped many a person for their debate. And Alex Katsanos, this is not pre-recorded. I am going to be on MSNBC in 30 minutes. And we're going to keep going until they pull me out of here to go on set. Because that's how, and I don't know what's happening here, but I'm in this room and the lights keep flickering on off. I don't know. Anyway, so I watched the debate, and everybody except for George Conway was the most scripted, disingenuous, awful presentation I've ever seen. George Conway was the only one who spoke like a real human being. Now, I happen to vote for Michael Asher for a variety of reasons. I was actually not going to necessarily vote for Michael Asher. What put me over the edge is seeing what was going up in that district just north of me, New York 13, that we just talked about. And I was like, I ran into Michael Asher. The beauty of living in New York is you always run into the people running for office.
You go to Zabar's and they're there.
I was literally walking. Well, it's funny you say I was walking to Zabar's.Id I tell you this? Or you just guessed? Okay, no. I was walking to Zabar's.
It's the Upper West Side. It's all a cliche. I know it well.
So my son got braces.
Democracy and white fish salad. They go together.
Yeah, of course. So my son gets braces on Thursday. And he's very whiny because he has braces and now he can't eat anything. Yeah, no, my mouth hurts, my teeth hurt. I need to, I need you to go to Zabar's and I need you to get me the chicken noodle soup. I'm like, can I just go around the corner and get chicken noodle soup? No. It has to be Zabar's chicken noodle soup. So, I was like, all right, fine, fuck it, I'll go up there and get chicken noodle soup. So I'm walking up Broadway, as one does, to go to Zabar's. If people don't know, if you're not from New York, Zabar's is a wonderful, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a food store. It's a
deli gone mad.
It's like a deli, yeah. Very good. Should you find yourself anywhere near the Museum of Natural History in New York, walk over a couple of blocks, walk west, you'll see Zabar's.
As my friend Schneider used to say, they treat fish with respect.
Yes. That's exactly right. If you want a little nosh, you want a little salmon, you want a little lox, not even salmon. You want a little lox, little Nova, go to Zabar's. Or some chicken noodle soup. Their chicken noodle soup actually is very good. So I'm walking up Broadway to Zabar's. I'm annoyed. I think I'm on the phone with Michelle, expressing to her how annoyed I am about this situation, as a matter of fact. And I walked past Fairway. And I was like, the other place where all these, and of course, who's standing there but Michael Asher, asking people for their vote. And I walk up to him. I've never met him. I don't really go to talk to politicians because I get paid to do that. So in my free time, I don't want to be anywhere around them. And I said, hey, just so you know, I really appreciate you standing up for the Jewish community. We're all pretty scared right now. And, we mean it. I'm grateful. And he was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because I wanted him to know that, like, there are people out there who actually still appreciate that, because I know it's hard for a Democrat these days. And he was really like, and I was like, all right, I'll vote for this guy purely on that issue. Like, I have become radicalized in the opposite extreme. And I hate Benjamin Netanyahu and I hate AIPAC. I just hate the anti-Semitism. I can't take it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
that's funny. Funny. I would have voted for him as well.
Lasher. But I have to say, in the debate, what's interesting about this, and we'll go back to the news in a second, but what's interesting about this is that watching this debate, the only one who came across well was Conway, because George spoke the way George speaks. If you ever spoke to George in real life, or he speaks the way George speaks in real life, the way George speaks on TV, the way George speaks in that debate is spoken. That debate was completely consistent.
Yeah, I think if he positioned himself as I'm here to stop Trump, that's it, then I'll leave. I think that if he had been a more fulsome candidate with a more fulsome platform, he would have done better. He came in fifth.
I think the problem for George is he's a former Republican, and people just can't. You've got
to get over a leap there.
Yeah.
So the other story I would love to bring up before you get dragged to the studio, is J.D. Vance.
Oh, please, can we talk about this? Saying
that Watergate would have been a 12-hour story, and it's such a self-own of present-day politics and feckless journalism, because he's right. The sick part is he's right. And what he's really saying as a self-own is that everything that this administration does every half day is worse than Watergate by far, and only lasts 12 hours. And what he's saying as well, without meaning to say so, is that our feckless, lazy, scared media are not covering those scandals that happen every 12 hours in this United States today, that they have a Watergate a day. They have 2 Watergates a day, and they don't treat it like that. So that J.D. Vance, I hate to say it, was inadvertently and sickly correct. What did you think of it?
I agree. I think J.D. Vance is really bad at this.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at this. Did you see his thing with his wife, by the way, his pregnant wife, where he put his hand on her knee, kind of like what a coach would do to like a kid who's like, good job. Crazy.
Under his eye.
Her choice. She does not need to stay in that relationship. But she didn't get pregnant on her own, however. So I would say that J.D. Vance really sucks at this. And J.D. Vance, you can't keep up the bullshit 24/7. And J.D. Vance deep down knows what this is all about. The most honest thing he ever said is that Trump is Hitler, and so on and so forth. J.D. Vance has a daddy complex. His daddy is Peter Thiel. He was looking for a father his whole life. He found one. His name was Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel is his puppet master.
But J.D. Vance, I think, looks at him as like, I need a father figure. I need a daddy, right? And so I think from that perspective, he is very much just a liar, and you can't keep lying all the time. For instance, Michigan Gorilla 6800. I'm not going to lie to you. You're sounding awfully Zionist, because I am. Because to me, Zionism is the right of Jews to live in their ancestral homeland without having to worry about getting killed. That's all Zionism is. I don't know how you define it, but that's what Zionism is, literally. So if I were J.D. Vance, I guess I'd lie and tell you what you want to hear. And after a while, my head would start exploding because I would come across as totally disingenuous and a total liar. I'd rather tell you what I believe. And if you disagree with me, you have one of two choices. You could either have an engaged dialogue with me about it, or you can stop following me. Up to you. By the way, from my perspective, don't care. But if you're J.D. Vance, you are constantly trying to pander to whoever can give you a leg up in your career. And he successfully did it by becoming the second most, heartbeat away from the presidency. What's interesting about J.D. Vance, I wrote about this too this week, is J.D. Vance can't get fired. Like, J.D. Vance can speak truth to power if he wanted to.
He could.
And Tucker Carlson gave this, I don't know if you saw this interview that Tucker Carlson gave, where he's like, that's it, I'm out of the Republican Party, and I'm leaving, and I don't care, and the one person I still care about is J.D. Vance. I feel sorry for him. I'm like, you feel sorry for him? You sound like Prince Harry writing in his book that he feels sorry for Prince William, that he has to be king, that he can't, there's no escape, there's no way out, right? Like Prince Charles would have much rather, hug trees or whatever he wanted to do, but he has no choice. He's born into this life. He has to be king. I don't even think that's true for the British royal family anymore. Abdication exists. It is certainly not true for J.D. Vance. What are you feeling sorry for him for? J.D. Vance wants to say Donald Trump is a fucking lying piece of shit. He can say that, and the one person Donald Trump cannot fire is J.D. Vance.
Yeah, but J.D. Vance, we saw the true J.D. Vance. That's the most important revelation that I've heard so far in the Haberman Swan book. is J.D. Vance walking into the Situation Room calling for the Insurrection Act. He is the fascist.
Of course.
And so he becomes, those who wish that Trump would keel over.
Nope.
We get Vance next. And that's the truth of J.D. Vance. And who's controlling J.D. Vance? He, in many ways, is going to be much more dangerous.
100%. I would rather have Trump than Vance. I will also say, speaking of the Maggie Haberman book, and then I got to run, but speaking of the book, it is very apparent to me, and I wrote a Substack on this yesterday, and it's paywalled, but I'm going to break the paywall for my friends here because you guys are all watching us. I wrote something that basically talked about who is the biggest leaker based on this book. Like, who has consistently been, right? Who is it? And I'm going to quote Tina Brown in her review. And I love Tina Brown. She's very smart. She basically says, who's the Judas? Who's the Judas? Who are the leaks? Is it Wiles? Is it Vance? Who is it, right?
Who recorded the Situation Room of all things.
Right, in the Situation Room. But more broadly, it's a very interesting parlor game, but it glosses over, I think, a much more interesting question. Who has spent years making sure that no matter what, this person always comes out looking good? Because that person has been working these particular authors, Maggie and Swan, for years, and many others for years, giving them tidbits about everybody else in order to be spared the axe personally. Who do you think that person is?
And who do you say it is?
Well, I'm going to quote myself here from my Substack, and I'm going to read you this paragraph. Brown, to her own surprise, writes that one of the revelations of the book is how well the odd couple of global diplomacy, in her words, comes across. Quote, the ever-sunny real estate deal man, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's effete-looking son-in-law, Jared Kushner. After the Abraham Accords and the Gaza ceasefire, she concludes, it may be time to acknowledge that Kushner is a, quote, skilled, pragmatic closer, and Witkoff never stops trying. Friends, Jared Kushner has fucked up everything he's ever touched. He can fuck up a wet dream. I hate that expression, but I don't know how else to put it because I got to run to do the show. So I'm gonna make the snappy and quick. And the fact that Jared Kushner comes across, along with his partner in grift, as I call him, Steve Witkoff, comes across well in this book, just underscores that Jared Kushner has been working this angle since the first Trump term. He's courted every Axis journalist. He's whispered behind the backs of everybody else and positioned himself as the same one. He positioned himself as the Sphinx who floats above the freak show while everyone gets blamed for it.
If son-in-laws like that, who needs a mother-in-law?
Yeah. In reality like this, though, he's fucked up. He got us into this war with Iran because that's who his paymasters in the Gulf states wanted. Qatar, Saudi, the UAE, they wanted the United States to take out Iran for them. And then when Iran decided to snap back at them and start bombing the shit out of Qatar and Saudi Arabia and the UAE, all of a sudden, they're like, oh, no, we got to stop this war. And of course, Jared was like, we got to stop this war. And the war stopped by selling out everybody, us, the Israeli, everybody. And so, to be clear, that's when he gets on the phone with Donald Trump because he is the son-in-law is on the phone with Donald Trump, where Trump tells Netanyahu. So after Israel struck Doha, right? After they struck Qatar, because Qatar was shielding the political leadership of Hamas, Jared gets upset because Qatar bailed him out with 666. If you remember 666 Fifth Avenue, Qatar has given him hundreds of millions of dollars for his affinity partners, for his private equity fund. He says in this book, I'm fucking out. The Israelis are crazy. And then he gets his father-in-law to carry water for him and for his Qatari paymasters by calling Netanyahu and to scream at him. And this is what Trump says. Everybody's sick of you, Bibi. Wow. Jared is listening in on the phone call. All the Jews are sick of you. Even the two Jews in this call are sick of you. The two Jews are Witkoff and Kushner. And then Jared sees this as an opportunity to rein Netanyahu in And he drafts what became Trump's 20-point Gaza peace plan. And then at that point, he meets with Qatar's prime minister on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York and tells him that he could either isolate Israel further or use the moment as leverage. And here's astonishing detail. The Qatari prime minister then takes Kushner's laptop and begins to type edits directly into the peace plan draft. Listen to this. The prime minister of Qatar, a country whose sovereign wealth fund has helped Kushner's private equity firm, edited the American president's Gaza peace plan directly on Kushner's laptop. Now, in a normal world, that wouldn't be a charming anecdote about pragmatic diplomacy. In a normal world, it would be a flashing red corruption.
A scandal, yes.
But because Jared has been working and leaking these reporters and many others for years, he comes across as a Svengali, brilliant foreign policy maker, where Tina Brown, I don't know if she meant this kind of archly, is like, to my surprise, Jared Kushner comes across really well here. He comes across, like, what?
Yeah, but the thing is, I've dealt with Jared a few times. He is a weasel. He's the weasel's weasel.
Of course.
For him to come off well means you've got to go from below normal, from weasel up to normal, and then up to look good.
Of course.
So they elevated him.
But if he's constantly leaking to you and he's your source and everything, you know.
And you're going to say it's sold books. Amazon sold out.
It's sold out. Sold out. All right.
All right, you go on the air. Have a good show.
Thank you.
Give my respect to Alicia. She's the best.
I will certainly do that. And for everybody else, I will be back with Dana and Lawrence tomorrow. Michelle is not going to be here, but
Michelle's on vacation. She can enjoy
Michelle's on vacation. Michelle would love you. We hope you have a great, great time at the beach. And Jeff, whatever you're doing in New York today, I hope you have a great time. And everybody else, if you have access to MS Now, I'll be there in 10 minutes. So tune in. And I have no idea what I'm talking about, so we'll all be surprised together. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.